Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a very special video because one of my brothers from work, Chad, special shout out to you, my friend. I turned Chad into a little frag head. He's a little mini me in the making. And every day he comes over and kind of sprays whatever I bring to the office. He didn't get a chance to spray today, my scent of the day, which very interestingly enough, happened to be an Areej Le Dore as well. This is called Ottoman Empire. I've been craving this for some reason. When the Texas heat hits, and today it was very, very hot. It was in the high mid 90s, but it felt like it was 100 degrees. And it was very muggy. Humidity in the 70s, mid 70s, 75% humidity. Very, very hot and muggy. I mean, you're sweating your ass off. You go outside, right? But while most people want to wear the fresher aquatic scents, I've been craving rose oud. Go figure. So this is all I have left, unfortunately. And every time I wear it, I'm like, oh God, but I love this stuff, man. It's my scent of the day, Ottoman Empire, one of my favorite rose ouds. Go watch my review. And so he bought an Areej Le Dore because of me. Well, he tested some first, smartly. And he ended up going for this because this is one of the ones that's still left for purchase. And so he brought it to the office and said, hey man, you can do a review on it, but I want you to swap 5 ml decants. So send me a 5 ml decant of Royal Barn and you can get a 5 ml decant of Forbidden Flower. And I said, that's perfect, because I really love this stuff. Go watch my Musk Collection Areej Le Dore. There's a live stream where I went through the sample set that Russian Adam sent me one by one on the live stream. So he sent me home with the bottle, and I figured what better chance to do a video than when I actually have the Forbidden Flower bottle in my hand. And how about this presentation, by the way? I am still in awe at the presentations. They are absolutely beautiful, stunning. I would love a bottle of this one day. It is just fantastic. And so you can kind of read right there. Well, you can read right there if you'd like. But I'll read it to you here in a minute as well. We'll go through what it says. But here is the beautiful bottle. I already took out my 5 ml decant. And so look at that. I think it's just a stunning regal bottle. The top reminds me a little bit of the cap of a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup or something. Or the hat from one of the Mortal Kombat fighters. Who was the guy? Started with an R. Someone will put it in the comments. But you know, his friend who makes these right here. These Fort and Manle fragrances changed the bottles. Okay, so he used to look like this. Now their fragrances have this kind of Reese's peanut butter top, and I think Russian Adam ended up liking them. So here's the presentation is fantastic as usual. The cap is heavy as all get out. You could throw this at somebody and knock them out. I love the attention to detail Adam does on the presentation. And, you know, he brings up a very good point. He talked about this in one of our interviews. He said, Ramsey, 99% of the time the bottle is sitting on the shelf. So when it's sitting on the shelf, you want it to look beautiful. You want it to do its job, sitting in the collection, not just a standardized bottle, which all these houses do now. Amouage, Tom Ford's, you know, even Roja's, they all do standardized bottle because that's the most expensive part, the bottle. The mold for the bottle is the most expensive part, which kind of makes you wonder how a brand like Avon, I did this unboxing yesterday, how a brand like Avon could have all these different crazy bottles, which nowadays seems like an absolute steal for what you're getting compared to what they paid. Anyways, I just wanted to show you guys the presentation. It is lovely. This is not my bottle. This is Chad's bottle, so thank you for allowing me to use it to do the review, mate. Okay, so let's read the little blurb according to the website, and they're still available on AreejLeDore.com. You get 53 mils for $250. It's one of the cheaper ones from the collection, but if I could get one more, it would probably be this or Creme de la Creme. These are the two that I would still like from this collection. So the blurb basically says, inspired by modern times when animalic ingredients are banned and natural floral materials are highly restricted, let us dive into the wicked beauty of both. Very fair, very short and to the point. The note listing is skunk oil, grapefruit, hemp flower oil in the top, hearts of jasmine sambac, rani flower, and sandalwood in the base, in the heart, base of patchouli, cedar, benzoin, vetiver, turmeric, vanilla, ginger, coriander, and Indonesian lime. Okay, so that is the note listing. Let's talk a little bit about how it opens up. I put this on after work today. I worked all day, had to go to take my car to get some stuff done, which it was ridiculously expensive to do stuff, but I had to do it. And so I went after work to go get some stuff done on my car. That took a couple hours. Now I'm coming home. It's 8:15. Still haven't eaten dinner. Doing the review for you guys, but I put this on after work, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's about a couple hours in, I think, from where I sprayed it, maybe an hour and a half. But so it opens up with probably one of my favorite grapefruit notes I've ever smelled in perfumery. It's opening up with grapefruit, skunk oil, and what smells like cannabis. Okay, now they say hemp flower, which, you know, you could maybe make the case it's a little bit different than an out and out cannabis accord. But for me, do you know how sometimes when you drive by a skunk in the road that's been hit, right? And it gives off this sort of marijuana smell. That's where the term skunk weed came from. So that's the opening of Forbidden Flower. The flowers come later on, or heavier later on, I should say. But the star of the opening for me is how the grapefruit sort of is so sharp and crisp and bitter. Okay, and it's almost how when you eat a bitter grapefruit, it makes you pucker your lips. You're like, you know, you get that lip puckering like feel. That's how bitter it is. I love how it isn't sweet, but it's tart. It's acidic, and mostly it's juicy. In the opening, the grapefruit literally feels juicy. Like you took a bite of grapefruit and the juices are just like running down your chin, you know? You're eating it like a barbarian, just juice running down your chin. And the opening feels like you put kind of like fresh grapefruit, like you took your grapefruit and you put it into a juicer and you made grapefruit juice out of it. Okay. And finally, the final touch of that citrus-like opening is that Indonesian lime, which you noticed he put it in the base notes, interestingly enough, but you will get this lime, like almost like a hint of lime. Okay. You know how sometimes you'll see like Doritos with a hint of lime, or Bud Light with a hint of lime, or whatever it is. Just a little hint of lime is kind of what you get splashed, a little bit of fresh lime splashed with your grapefruit juice that you just blended fresh. All right. And I noticed, interestingly enough, you know, smelling so many fragrances as my journey has continued over this last decade, I noticed many designer grapefruits I don't like. I don't like the way that the designer grapefruits are executed. There's something very synthetic about them. And this is the exact opposite of that. And I was thinking about what other grapefruit is mixed with animalics that gives me a very similar type vibe. Not necessarily in smell, but just the way the grapefruit is kind of taken and mixed with this animalic note. And you know what came to mind? Case in point of me liking niche or higher end grapefruit notes much better than the designer realm is something like Overture Man. There's a full review on the channel of Overture Man. I got one of the very first bottles when you could only get this at Harrods. It was not easy to get when the name was still on the side of the bottle and also right here on the collar. But Overture Man is much heavier and, you know, base heavier with ambery animalics and stuff like that in the base, okay? There's different animalic notes in here, but the way the grapefruit and the animalics blend together, there's no skunk oil in here, obviously. It's probably civet and maybe a couple other things, but case in point, the way that the grapefruit blends with the animalic notes will remind you a little bit of the way the skunk note blends with the grapefruit and a little bit of lime in Forbidden Flower, okay? They're not the same, like I said, but just focus on that grapefruit accord and the way that it blends with the animalic notes, and it'll give you an idea. As that's the opening, okay? They start to go in much different directions. You can't really compare anything else except for the opening of Overture Man because it's much denser and richer and thicker. And even though you noticed that I mentioned things like patchouli and heavier notes, this fragrance doesn't wear heavy, okay? We'll talk a little bit about that as the review goes on. But if I was going to place this into a season, believe it or not, this would be spring and summer for me. Because Overture, as an example, has much heavier ambery notes in the base, which are missing from Forbidden Flower, okay? But the way the grapefruit and the animalics mix together will kind of remind you, they're not a million miles apart in the when you first spray, okay? The other thing, I am very usually heavily disappointed by cannabis accords. Any cannabis note in perfumery, very rarely do marijuana notes live up to their hype. A lot of people hype cannabis fragrances that really let me down. There's a couple that I will admit I really like. One is called Kinski by Kinski Fragrances. It's almost impossible to find. It's a celebrity fragrance, one of my favorite celebrity fragrances of all time, named after the late great, slightly insane actor Klaus Kinski. He was kind of one of those, there's always a little bit of crazy with genius kind of guy. But Kinski and Black Afghano are two sort of cannabis accord-like fragrances that I really like. This is a third. Forbidden Flower is a third. And I really think when you blend this harmony of sort of smelly, skunky weed with the skunk, and you get something that I think is really special because it's like a perfect harmony of this citrusy, rindy grapefruit, right? And the skunk weed-like smell, which apparently to humans, the reason that skunk and weed smell the same is they both apparently have a very volatile sulfuric compound known as thiols, Thiols, thiols. And so it is interesting that they both share a similar compound and why they smell the same to us. But to me, this is a perfect example of why somebody would spend their hard-earned money on an artisanal fragrance, okay? Some people, I think, really understand my shift into the artisanal space, and other people are like, why? Why would you buy this when you could go buy a Xerjoff or a Roja, right? Or an Amouage? Why would you spend your money on an Ensar or a Bojnokopff or an Areej Le Dore? Case in point, okay? And it's funny because many folks, I think, say, oh, it's an Areej Le Dore, Ramsey automatically likes it, as if Russian Adam is just giving me free bottles. In fact, Russian Adam has never given me one free bottle. Not one. Every single Areej Le Dore bottle that you see in my collection, I bought with my own money, or, like in the example of Royal Barn, which interestingly enough, even Royal Barn, which he claimed I had a small part to play in because of the imagery of the way I described Cuir de Russie on some of my previous videos. Chanel's Cuir de Russie inspired him to create Royal Barn, with this highfalutin aristocracy partying in the most beautiful, halls with the best chefs in the world. There's food galore, the chandeliers sparkling. They're wearing their best, most expensive outfit, and then they go out, and what do? Do they get into their Bentley or their G5? No. They get into a horse and buggy, right? And get into their little carriage, and they can still smell the horse, the animalic countryside, the animalic side of the animal that's pulling the horse and buggy. And so even though he said I had a very small part to play because I influenced the idea of Royal Barn, he didn't send me a bottle of this. This was sent to me by a friend in the community who said, dude, you deserve to have a bottle of this in your collection. Very, 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 very kind folks, right? But I'm not hyping up Areej Le Dore because, he's out there giving me free bottles. This is where my nose is telling me to go, right? And so, but I do think that this, as an example, Forbidden Flower is almost like a perfect example of why somebody would spend their hard-earned money on an artisanal fragrance, because there are notes in here that you will not find in the mainstream market, no matter how hard you look, no matter how niche you go. Roja's not putting skunk oil in a fragrance, okay? Period. End of story. So let's focus on that skunk note because I want to show you guys something. So this is pure USA Skunk Oil, and I don't know if you can see how it almost looks like it's hardening on the bottom. That's an important part to understand how this actually smells. I'm going to dip this Areej Le Dore blotter in, which I need some more of, Adam. But I'm going to dip this Areej Le Dore blotter in, and I want to just show you real quick what it looks like when it all comes together. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, ready? Look at that. Did you see how it almost breaks up the chunk? Okay, so you see that hard, buttery part on the bottom? Oh my God. I mean, I used to absolutely despise this smell. When I first got this, go watch my my video I did. It's under the Areej Le Dore playlist where I went through each and every one of these individual fragrance materials and smelled them. And the first time I smelled skunk, I was like, oh my fucking, get that shit away from me. You know what I mean? It is guaranteed to give you a reaction, but it's so buttery. Buttery is the way to describe it. And you know me, I love animalic fragrances. And I will say this, one of the best things anyone ever did for me is what Russian Adam did, sending me these fragrance oils. This is way better than a free bottle, because these have allowed me to understand fragrances in a way that I never would have otherwise. Smelling the actual Jasmine Sambac and then smelling the Jasmine Sambac in a composition is worth its weight in gold. I mean, you will get a much deeper appreciation and understanding of perfume. Similar for smelling the skunk oil. It doesn't drive me away anymore like it used to. But one thing I can promise you is you will not find a fragrance highlighted at the Macy's counter with skunk oil, period. End of story. And you know I love things like Castoreum, my favorite animalic. I love Civet. I like Hyrax, but it's probably my least favorite. I really love Ambergris, those animalic notes like that. And then there's other animalic notes. You know, there's Musk Mallow, there's Costus, there's you know, notes that are plant-based, but they smell animalic. There's all different ways to create animalic accord. And of course there's musk. Real deer musk is one of the most beautiful and just insanely mind-boggling smells I've ever smelled. Russian Adam says it likes to go straight to his brain, to the top of his brain when he smells it. And I know exactly what he means by that. But skunk is one of the, I want to say, left out fragrance or animalic notes. I saw in Fiona, there's skunk oil. There's also muskrat, which is maybe one of the craziest animalics I've ever seen. I've never seen another fragrance composition with muskrat in it. Fucking muskrat. But the reason that you don't see very many fragrances using this animalic note in particular, skunk oil, is it is extremely hard to work with, from my understanding. Apparently, skunk can be smelled from half a mile away, real skunk, and linger. And of course, this is real skunk. But if you hit a skunk on the side of the road or something, it can linger for weeks around the spot where it was hit. And so, or if you get sprayed or something, it can linger for weeks. If you ever had a dog that got sprayed by a skunk, forget about it. Just, you know, lock the dog in the room and come back in a couple weeks. It's just kidding. Don't do that. But it's almost an impossible task to properly dose skunk oil. And you want to be able to smell it as you're, you know, one of the reasons you buy artisanal fragrances is because you want to smell the real animalics, the real flowers, right? Real sandalwood, not Javanol, which is a good alternative, but not some of these kind of, you know, oil house alternatives, let's call them, right? And real ouds. Real ouds is one of the biggest things, but this is an example of other reasons why you would want to buy artisanal, right? And so, you know, you're smelling a rare animalic ingredient that many frag heads just often do not get to experience. And more than one drop can ruin the entire fragrance composition. Because like I said, half a mile, you can smell, humans can smell skunk up to half a mile away. That's how strong it is. So here, I think Russian Adam got it right. It has just enough of that sulfuric, buttery skunk smell, which is right here. And it almost smells like, you know what it smells like? It smells like the most sour, pungent butter you could ever imagine. Like, imagine, I say butter as a descriptor because it has the texture of butter, the smell of butter. When you smell skunk oil, it smells like sour butter. And if you can imagine in a liquid form that's so dense and powerful that the molecules become harder and harder and end up binding together, like going from a liquid to a solid, like freezing something, right? That's what, that image right there of skunk oil is the best representation I can give you for how it smells. That milky, creamy, buttery feel right there on the bottom, right? That is the way that it smells, okay? And like I said, I used to hate this sample of skunk oil. Go to my old video, check it out, see what I thought of it. But it's grown on me. And if it was not for my ban on buying perfume because of the divorce, I would definitely buy a bottle of Forbidden Flower, hands down. $250 for me is, I think it's a steal. But I mean, I just love how this is basically an animalic floral, is basically how you would describe Forbidden Flower. The texture of the fragrance is light, okay? It almost goes back and forth between like an oil and a solid smell. Just like I was trying to describe the way that the skunk smell feels buttery and thick, right? But the fragrance itself does something magical in that it almost feels like it's not just the skunk that goes into this sort of thicker, sour, buttery part, but the rest of the perfume feels fresh and light enough to wear even in the hottest Texas summer heat days. And I think that's probably where the fragrance would shine best, like I said, in the heat. But it almost feels like it's not just the skunk oil, it's the whole fragrance. It feels like the whole fragrance goes back to this light, thin kind of oil, like a very thin sheet on the top of your hand or on your wrist or something like that. It wears very light and thin and uplifting and fresh and energetic and all those words, right? So finally, the final piece of the puzzle to me is that you are getting real high-end florals here, which may not appeal to most people. Most people may not care if they're getting some IFF floral substitute, right? Um, or they're getting real flowers. Most people won't care. But as you get deeper and deeper into the fragrance game, you realize that you want beautiful, proper jasmine sambac. You want the real thing. If you've never smelled jasmine essential oil, which I was, again, very, very blessed to smell. I don't have it in this one. I have it in another one. But the jasmine essential oil, even though I don't really like jasmine like that most of the time, the jasmine essential oil is just one of the most beautiful things I've ever smelled. It is, it's almost like you just have to stop in your tracks as a fragrance lover and just enjoy the smell. It is so, so beautiful and so deep and rich, you know, like there's just layer and layer. Like you're smelling a whole field of jasmine flowers at your beckoning. And so, you know, this is a composition where it feels like you're getting a mixture of jasmine sambac essential oil and the absolute. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of what it smells like to me. And you know, you have to remember, real jasmine flowers are very, very expensive. Jasmine is not cheap. Jasmine is really expensive nowadays, and all the big oil houses have their major substitutes. But here, the jasmine smells fresh and definitely more masculine way to use jasmine. So there's two main types of jasmine. Jasmine grandiflorum, which is the old grandma jasmine, is how it's described as, the honeyed, thick jasmine that feels like it's just dripping. Indolic jasmine, heavy and thick and rich and honeyed texture. And then there's the jasmine sambac, which gives here, that's exactly what's being used. So you get this energetic, piercing jasmine, like it has like a zing to it. And that zing adds more of an energetic feel along with that zing of the grapefruit and the lime I mentioned in the beginning, right? So I know it sounds like a Bud Light commercial, hint of lime and all that good stuff, but I'm telling you, it absolutely works, and it feels fresh. It feels like it has depth, but it feels fresh. See, animalics, believe it or not, do the opposite of what most people think. Most people think animalics make a fragrance feel heavier and dirtier and bring a fragrance down, but really it's the opposite. Most fragrance compositions lean down anyways, whereas the animalics bring them up, okay? They bring them up. And so here, there's so many different notes that add the zing and the freshness, but without the skunk oil, it would all fall apart. It would not be what it is without the skunk oil here. The skunk oil, even though it's the tiniest drop, I would bet it's the least amount of any ingredient used in here. I bet he had to just do the tiniest drop, diluted a million times over. But it adds so much uplifting freshness in a way where even all the citrus notes, like there's ginger in here. He didn't just put ginger in the top, he put ginger in the base, so that when the fresher notes of the lime and the grapefruit burn off, you are left with something that still adds bite. Ginger adds that zing, that freshness, right? Now, there's a second type of jasmine that's also included in here. That's called Rani flowers, or night blooming jasmine is probably what you'll know it as. That is one of the thicker, richer smelling jasmine. It's heavier than the jasmine sambac. It's sweeter than the jasmine sambac. Has a very powerful, sweet aroma, okay? And it blends beautifully and sits on this base, this bed of what I would call naturally smelling sandalwood, very buttery in texture, and the buttery sandalwood plays beautifully with the buttery feel of the skunk oil, okay? So there's a lot more notes in the base, but that's not how I experience the fragrance. I don't get a big hit of patchouli. I don't get a big hit of vetiver or benzoin or cedar. I mean, is it a little bit woody? Yes, it's woody. Cedar, I could see more than some of the other ones I mentioned, but I don't get vanilla. I don't get vanilla. I don't get benzoin. I don't get heavy patchouli. I don't get many of the real heavy bass notes that are listed in here, but I do get that beautiful natural sandalwood. And, you know, Russian Adam has been distilling sandalwood since he basically started Feel Oud with Dmitry Bojnokopff, right? You think about that 100K sandalwood that they distilled originally. And here you get a beautiful fresh sandalwood, which, as I mentioned earlier, for the frag head, yes, the Javanol and all the substitutes are nice, but nothing like the real thing. Nothing like the real thing. No matter how good of a perfumer you are, it's almost like nature. Many times what you smell in nature beats out some of the synthetic recreations of nature. And that's how this fragrance feels. This feels like an homage to an animalic note that is forgotten and the beautiful flowers that are now forbidden in perfumery because you can only use a certain amount of things like rose. I don't know if jasmine is restricted or if it's just so exorbitantly expensive that you're not going to find a lot of real jasmine in a lot of these fragrances. You're going to find substitutes. And as the years have gone on, it feels like the substitutes have taken over more and more and more and more. Originally, it was lots of naturals and a little bit of synthetics. Now it's lots of synthetics and the tiniest drop of naturals if you're lucky. And so that's how it feels. And that's why these artisanal fragrances are so powerful and so important to me. And why I focus on them. Also, because I got to give this bottle back to Chad tomorrow. So thank you, Chad. But yes, that is my take on it. If you have experience with Forbidden Flower, I would love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I would love a bottle one day. So thank you to everybody. As always, it's a pleasure and a joy. I absolutely adore doing these videos for you guys. I hope I can continue doing them for a long, long time. Even though it's a lot of work, it's worth it to me. So I'm going to upload this and hit the gym. So as always, cheers. Love you guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.